Hello everyone, thank you for joining us on the second episode of our new program series called Issues in Economic Development on Amalgate Radio Communications. I remain your host, Titilola Ogunshono. Last week, which happened to be our maiden episode, we mentioned the core issues that will be discussed in this quarter on our new program series. We went further to mention and discuss some core economic factors or determinants of economic development in any nation or country. Today, we will be delving into non-core economic factors that are equally important determinants of economic development in any country or nation. Last episode, we already established the four core economic factors or determinants of economic development. We mentioned the first as the level of savings and capital in an economy that would determine the level of investment, which will determine the level of goods and services produced, and thus influence the level of economic growth in that country, and also invariably would affect the level of economic development in that country. We mentioned the second core economic factor as access to finance. When businesses have adequate access to finance as reasonable interest rates, not as exorbitant interest rates, it will make those firms' products competitive in the global market, and that will increase the level of employment opportunities, the level of income, of the people in that economy, thus influencing the standard of living of the people of that economy, and which speaks to the quality of life for which economic development stands for. We also mentioned the level of foreign direct investment in an economy in a particular country will determine the level of economic development. Expectedly, all things being equal, if the level of foreign direct investment is high in a country, definitely we expect that there will be growth, and growth in all sectors should lead to economic development of that country. And whether I to say that the level of macroeconomic stability will determine the level of economic development, and we mentioned some variables that play a significant role in determining the level of stability of the macro environment of a country. We mentioned inflation rate, we mentioned exchange rate stability, we mentioned interest rate or lending rate, and we also mentioned tax rates. So that's a big brief recap of the four main factors called economic determinants of economic development. Today our focus will be on non-economic factors, but they're also very crucial because it's going to speak to the level of development of a country. If you do not have these factors present in those countries, or having high presence of those factors in those countries. So the first one I'm going to speak into today is education. Why is education important? Statistics have proven that the more educated the people are in a nation, the higher the level of productivity, economic growth, and development. So when the people in a particular country are well educated, it's expected that's going to lead to high level of efficiency in production level, and that will lead to growth, and sustained growth over a long period of time is expected to lead to economic development of that nation. And basic level of literacy and numeracy have helped economies grow from being purely traditional, that is from manual labor, to higher tech industries, especially in the service industry. And this has helped to open up a lot of opportunities for citizens, and a good example is that of India. And when I'm talking about education in this context, I'm not even talking about people who have a first degree or a second degree or a PhD degree. I'm speaking to the basic literacy rate. And when we talk about the basic literacy rate, we are talking about the percentage of people aged 15 and above in a particular country that can read and write. And they just being able to read and write will help them to be able to communicate better, and this is expected that it's going to make them employable. We talk about employability skills a lot. How many people in the country can read and write, that can communicate basically using the medium of instruction in that country? So when we talk about literacy rate, it's important to note they're not talking about people that can read and write just in English. You are talking about the medium, the language, of instruction in that country. So if the language of instruction, for instance, a country like Nigeria, is English, so you're going to measuring people, from 15 and above who can read, who can write, who can communicate effectively in English language. But it's not going to be the same for another country where the medium of instruction is, for instance, French. So you're going to be looking at the number of people who can read and write and communicate effectively, in French language. So this is important to note. So it's not about having the second degrees, like I said earlier, but it's about how many people can read and write and communicate effectively. When they can do this, there are not going to be communication barriers. They can understand what is taught. They can understand what the assignment is. They can understand what the job description is, what the job descriptions are, and that will help these people navigate and successfully through the world of business, the world of employment. Is going to allow them to operate at the peak of performance. And you realize that when you have countries with high level of literacy rate, it speaks to the level of development in that country, and research has proven this. I tried to look at the data pandas literacy rate compilation of countries that were that was done, and I realized that the top 5 countries was very interesting countries to note. We had countries who had 100% literacy rate. In that report, we had the likes of Finland, 100% literacy rate. We had Norway, 100% literacy rate. Luxembourg is the country we want to consider, 100% literacy rate. We had Andorra, 100% literacy rate. We had Greenland, 100% literacy rate. And that is really a lot, 100% literacy rate. We had countries who were close to 100, like about 99%. We have the likes of the UK, we have the likes of France, Canada, Australia, Belgium, Sweden, Switzerland, Denmark, Ireland, New Zealand, Monaco at 99% literacy rate. So 99% of the population were people that could either read or write, and that's when this report was compiled. And taking a good look at this, you realize that these European countries had about 100% literacy rate. So in other programs, I would want to consider what particular policies were implemented. Was there any institutional reform? What did they do to achieve all of this? It would be beautiful to note and also learn from, because the purpose of this program is to look at these issues, across the globe, see what developed economies have done, what can African countries learn from them, to look at the way forward. So I also looked at the countries, with the lowest literacy rate. And we have the likes of Chad at 26.7% literacy rate. We have Mali, 30.76%. We have South Sudan at 4.52%. Botswana at 36.75%. Afghanistan at 37.27%. Literacy rate. Niger to about 37%. And of course, we had Nigeria at about 59.7%. Literacy rate. And you going further, according to UNICEF, it was established that 31% of the population of Nigeria are illiterate. So we have 31% illiterate in Nigeria. So we are talking about people who can neither read or write in the language of instruction, which is English language, and this would have a lot of impact on their productivity level and on their employability skills, ability to be able to be employed in the workspace, and be able to compete with contemporaries in other countries. So we have that in Nigeria. 31% of our population, as illiterates. And also another the statistics for Nigeria is that the number of out-of-school children in Nigeria have risen to about 18.3 million. Over 18 million children who are supposed to be in school, that have the natural ability to be in school, are not in school. And that is the older. That's why it speaks, you can see this factor speaks to the level of development in that country. A highly developed economy would not have over 18 million children out of school. The second non-economic factor, determinant of economic development that I want to look at now is political stability. The level of political stability in a country would determine the kind of investment that you attract to your economy. Foreign investors do not want to come into an economy that is politically unstable. Nobody wants to invest in that kind of climate. They would rather go to another climate where the level of political stability is safe, and is high. And they don't foresee any threat to the level of stability of that country politically in the nearest future. And this position of mine has been supported according to the results from World Bank report on inward investments conducted in 2017. According to World Bank, there are three important factors that foreign investors will consider before investing in any economy or nation. The first is political stability and security, and the second is presence of legal and regulatory environment. So is that important? They want to look at the level of stability politically. They want to look at the level of your security. Nobody wants to come into a space where their lives will not be safe, where their property, their investment, their funds will not be safe. Nobody wants to come. And when foreign investors come into your country, they come with their people. So nobody wants to lose any member of staff. They don't want to lose their human capital. So the level of political stability and level of security in an economy will determine your level of development, because you would limit your ability to attract funds, the right resources into your economy. And it can be overflowed to say that political influences or politicking, influences businesses, both. Some have argued both negatively and positively. Is there any instance why how political instability could influence businesses, negatively? Yes, the trade war between the U.S. and China is a very good example. Why am I, taking this as a case study? Is because as a result of the trade war, taxes were actually placed on items imported from China by the U.S. during this period. And what was the effect of this? What it did was it made import more expensive for firms. For firms, they had to depend on the raw materials from China, getting the production input from China. The tax led to an increase naturally in the prices of these items, and it added to their own, production costs. And that is the effect of what trade war can do. Instability and increasing their An increase in production costs means that for the firms to make supernormal profits, they will have to increase their prices, and that will not make them competitive because they're not the only one producing such goods. It's not likely to be a monopoly market where you have just one producer. So, or the other alternative they have to do, if it's not a monopoly market, is that they would have to look for new suppliers, which might not be visible for them. And even the new suppliers could have some trade restrictions, from their own country. Different issues could come up with it. So this is one of the issue when it comes about trade wars, political stability, and the politicking. These are part of the effect I could have, and that could also, in a way, if you are even developing as a nation, it could reduce the pace of development in that particular, country or nation, as the case may be. I did a bit of research and I tried to look at countries, around the globe with the highest level of political instability. So let's see, because we say that when the level of political instability in a country is high, it's going to lead to a low level of economic development in that country. So we're saying political instability, and economic development have inverse relationship. Okay, so let's see if this is true. According to Statista.com, the ranking of countries with the highest level of political instability in 2022 was what I considered. And we had one that is the country with the highest level of political instability as of 2022. The first was Syria. Syria, and you can know that, because of the civil war they've had in 2012, it was a major contributing factor. We have Afghanistan coming after, we have Somalia, we have Yemen, Iraq, South Sudan, Libya, Central African Republic. So if you look at this country, you could say that, the level of political instability, either through civil unrest, war, has affected the level of economic development. So you can see that even if it's not an economic factor, these non-economic factors are also very strong determinants of economic development of any nation. Just like we have considered the countries with the highest level of political instability in 2022, I also researched and found out, the most peaceful countries to live in the world. And that's why we call them happy country, happy people. Everything is peaceful. The quality of life there is high. The standard of living is high. The quality of life there is high. Okay, and I want to share with us the compilation by Global Peace Index of the world's most peaceful country as of 2023. It was compiled by International Think Tank for Economics and Peace (IEP), and it covered 163 independent states. Ranking was actually based on 23 indicators, and these indicators were grouped into 3 criteria. We have the societal safety and security. 2, the extent of ongoing domestic and international conflict, and also the degree of militarization. Okay, and now I want to give us, I just mentioned 6, the 6 most happy country to live in, the most peaceful country. At number 1, the most peaceful country to live in, at number 1, spot 1 is Iceland. Okay, and interestingly, Iceland has retained its number 1 spot as the most peaceful nation in the world for 16 years in a row. I want to say that I think my next vacation should be Iceland. Okay, maybe you too. Okay, and they have retained this in a row since 2008. It's been a long time. In fact, since the inception of this index, Iceland has retained this spot as number 1. That's the most peaceful country to live in the world. And what are the indicators? They have very low crime rate. They have sound education and welfare systems. The jobs are available for those able and willing to work. and they have attractive, numeration packages for their cities. It's very attractive, very lucrative. Okay, so Iceland, like I said, at number one, the most peaceful country to live in the world. Well, it's some people it's because the population there is really low. They're not highly populated. That could be the reason. I've seen people, advocate and argue in this regard. But irrespective of number of population growth rate, Iceland has retained its spot as the most peaceful country to live in. Okay, now, if it's Iceland, number two is more densely populated than Iceland, and that is Denmark. Number two, the second most peaceful country to live in the world is Denmark, and it has regularly been named as the happiest nation in the world. You see people say Denmark, happy people, Denmark, happy country, happy people, a lot. And since the inception of this ranking, the Global Peace Index, Denmark has actually maintained that position between the second to the fifth. Okay, so if not second, it'll be fifth, fourth position. They've not gone beyond the fifth position. Okay, it's a very safe country to travel to and live in, and they have very high level of political stability, and this is what data has proven. Okay, and you would enjoy freedom of the press. People can hear their views without fear of being intimidated, or persecuted. It's really good for them, and they have great respect for human life. Human life is respected. They don't joke with it. The government does everything to protect every life. Every life matters in Denmark, and it's one country that I can say that they have high level of income equality. Every government of every nation will strive to achieve what we call macroeconomic objective, and one of which, in addition to economic growth, I want to apply balance of payments equilibrium. One of the macroeconomic objectives of any government is to ensure equitable distribution of income. You want to reduce the gap between the rich and the poor. That's why we talk about different classes of income: the high income earners, we talk about the medium income earners, and the low income earners. Now we see that what poverty does, what high inflationary pressure does for you in a country, is that when the inflationary pressure is very high, what you will see is that the middle class start slimming down. Before you know what is happening, we have even the middle class will not be there anymore if you are not careful. When inflationary pressure is very high and the government cannot curb it. So you have either the rich or the very poor. So, but in Denmark, the high level of income inequality is very low. So it means invariably that the high level of income equality exists in Denmark. No wonder they are happy people, okay? And we call that, according to, I said we had three main criteria, even the level of militarization. So Denmark has invested heavily in their defense. Well, another country to consider in addition to Denmark at number 3 is Ireland, okay? And you should know that Ireland did not achieve, this feat overnight. They also had to pass through various developmental phases. So it's another country that will be worth considering. How did Ireland get there? They didn't get there overnight. They had to put in some structure, some reforms in the economy to be able to get there. So you want to consider another country if you're not doing Iceland, and they want to go to Denmark. With Ireland is another place you want to consider. At number 4, the 4th most peaceful country to live in the world is New Zealand. And I like that New Zealand also has the same size as the UK, and the UK is on number 4. Okay, but when it comes to health status, they rank very ranked top in terms of health status, and when it comes to education, jobs, earnings, they pay above the average among OECD members. You can't take that away from them. And number 5, we have Austria, okay, the 5th most peaceful country to live in the world. Okay. Now we look at the sixth one, and I'll just wrap it up there in terms of the most peaceful countries. Another destination for you in terms of vacation is Singapore, the sixth most peaceful country to live in the world is Singapore at number 6. And Singapore is another country that is worth considering, because when this ranking started in 2008, like I mentioned, Singapore ranked 22nd spot. So how did they move from 22nd to 6th position? It shows that level of development should be continually planned, by the central government, the government of an economy. Once you are deliberate about it, want to set out policies, reforms, to achieve, and you have the political will to carry it out, you can achieve high level of economic development in any nation. So we have Singapore, okay, as the 6th most peaceful nation to live in the world. And also it's important to note that Singapore invested a lot, okay, in their police and military forces, because the main source of income lies in the seaborne trade. So they had to strengthen the naval base and resources to ensure smooth passage of the vessels. Okay, so it's important to note this. So I've mentioned the 6 most peaceful countries to live in the world. So you can consider any of these countries for your next vacation. If you're just joining us, thank you so much for joining. We are discussing the non-economic factors or determinants of economic development of any nation. Now we'll be discussing the last one on this episode, and that is the level of corruption in a country. Okay, the level of corruption, corruptible practices is very high in a country. It's going to speak to your level of development in that country. Okay, let's even start with what do we mean by corruption. So according to Cambridge Dictionary, corruption can be defined as anything that is illegal, bad, or dishonest behavior, especially by people in positions of power. So any behavior that is illegal, that is bad, that is deemed or termed as dishonest behavior, being exhibited by any person in position of power is called corruption. According to the World Bank, it can be defined as the abuse of power for personal benefit. I also like the definition by Transparency International. According to Transparency International, corruption can be viewed or can be termed or defined as the abuse of entrusted power for personal gain. I'll take it again. It can be defined as the abuse of entrusted power for private gain. Anytime you are in a position of authority and you deploy that power that's been given to you, entrusted in your hands for your personal gain, that is corruption. I can hear someone smile over there or laugh over there. That is corruption. And you need to know that there are various forms, means, or modes of corruption. So let's look at various instances. It could exhibit themselves in these circumstances. So let's look at this. When a public servant demands or receives favors or monetary rewards in exchange for services, you are corrupt. So anytime as a public servant you have received favors, you have demanded favors in exchange for services, that is termed as corruption. Okay, when a public servant, or we say a politician, misuses public funds or grants contracts based on personal relationships, sacrificing competence, then that is corruption. Now, I'm not saying that, look, if sometimes your siblings, your family, friends could be the best for that project, but if they go through the lay-down procedure, to bid then it's okay. But if we have in any way influenced that bid process, knowing that there's another company that can do it better, and you give it to somebody that is less competent because you are close, you have a personal relationship with such a person, that is termed as corruption. Okay. Now, it's not just the public office holders alone. Even I'm going to speak to the private organization. So if you are a private organization or a company or a firm, and you bribe officials directly to influence bid wins, that is corruption. Okay? So if we look at it, it's saying that corruption can happen to anyone and can adapt to different contexts and changing circumstances. I can hear somebody say, I've not influenced any bid, I've not, I've not taken funds, it's not mine, I've always been diligent, I maintain my integrity in terms of financial related matters. But let me ask you a question, or let me even say this. Not all acts of corruption result in payment or bribes. It might not involve money directly. So because it's not finance related, doesn't mean it is not corruption. Now, let me wrap it up with this example. When a public servant or a public employee, an employee that is working in a government parastatal, claims to be sick, you have called in sick, they cannot come to work for 2 weeks, only for you to go on vacation. What do we call that? You are also abusing your public position for personal use. So it's not just about financial matters. It's not all about money matters. Even when you claim to be ill and you go on vacation without applying for be it your annual leave, be it your casual leave, but you take advantage of that position for your personal use, that is also corruption. And remember, every action of ours speaks to a level of economic development. So it's time to start checking ourselves, start checking our behavior, start holding ourselves accountable for the level of economic development in our country. Well, I have to bring this episode to a close for today. I've had an awesome time, discussing the non-economic determinants of economic development, and I'm ending on that note of corruption. Before I leave, I want to leave us with the words of Kofi Annan, which says, if corruption is a disease, transparency is a central part of its treatment. Take it again. If corruption is a disease, then transparency is a central part of its treatment. So in every dealings as public office holders, we must learn to be transparent, even as individuals, firms, corporate organizations, institutions, in an economy, we need to learn to be transparent, because the bulk of economic development lies not just on the central government, on the government of a nation, it also lies on every one of us. We must make sure that we are transparent, and it becomes part of our core values as individuals, as a society, because that is the only way we can grow and achieve economic development. Thank you so much for staying tuned to the end of today's episode. I hope that you have learned one or two things. For feedback, comments, suggestions, kindly send a mail to us at contact@thearmorgate.org. So if you have any feedback, comments, the mail to send to is contact@thearmorgate.org. And remember, we have other beautiful, insightful, robust programs that you're going to learn from that runs Monday to Friday. But I hope that you take your time to join me also next Friday, same time, 5 p.m. WAT on Armorgate Radio Communications. I remain Titola Ogunshono saying bye from here, and hoping that you have a great weekend ahead.